There was a moment years ago when I finally realized nobody in my life actually knew what my days felt like. They knew what I did, sure. They knew I traded. They knew I worked from home. They knew I was technically free. But they had no idea what it felt like to sit inside your own head all day, making decisions that only you pay for. That part didn't show up in conversation. It didn't show up at family dinners. It didn't show up when someone casually said, "Must be nice to work for yourself." I used to nod and smile, and inside I felt this quiet gap, like I was standing in a different room from everyone else. At first I thought that freedom was the whole reward. No boss, no schedule, no commute, no one watching the clock. I chased that idea hard early on. I wanted out of normal life, out of someone else telling me what to do, out of predictable routines. I thought once I got there I would finally feel relaxed. I would finally breathe. What actually happened was I traded one kind of pressure for another, and this one was quieter and heavier and way harder to explain to anyone. I remember the early days, blowing small accounts, not even realizing I was doing it. I thought I was being aggressive, hungry, driven. Looking back, I was mostly scared and bored at the same time, which is a strange mix. Scared of missing out, scared of falling behind, scared that maybe I wasn't built for this. And bored because waiting feels like doing nothing when your ego wants action. Nobody warns you how lonely that internal battle feels. You can't really talk about it without sounding dramatic or unstable, so you just keep it inside. My family never really understood it. They tried in their way. They would ask how work was going, and I'd say fine, or busy, or slow. That was about as deep as it went. How do you explain that some days you feel sharp and confident, and other days you feel like every decision you make is slightly wrong and you can't tell why? How do you explain that the pressure doesn't turn off at the end of the day because it lives in your own head? You're both the worker and the boss and the critic and the risk manager and the emotional mess all rolled into one person. That gets heavy over time. There were stretches where I didn't feel like a professional at all. I felt like a person just trying to survive my own thoughts. I would overtrade just to feel like I was doing something useful. Then I'd pull back and do almost nothing because I didn't trust myself. That back and forth can mess with your confidence in quiet ways. You start questioning not just your decisions, but your judgment as a person. That's not something people post about online. Social media made that part louder over the years. Suddenly everyone was winning, everyone had perfect timing, everyone looked calm and confident and rich and relaxed. Even when I knew better, even when I had enough years behind me to recognize the highlight reel effect, it still got into my head sometimes. I'd catch myself comparing my normal messy day to someone else's polished moment. The tools changed. The speed changed. The pressure didn't. If anything, the noise just got closer to your ear. I remember thinking at one point that maybe the loneliness would fade as I got more experienced. Like once you've seen enough cycles, enough wins and losses, you'd settle into some peaceful rhythm. It didn't really work that way for me. The loneliness changed shape, but it didn't disappear. Early on it was confusion and fear. Later it became responsibility and isolation. When you're the only one accountable for every decision, there's no one to share the weight with in real time. You can't hand it off. You can't say, "Let me run this" by someone. By the time you talk about it later, the emotional moment has already passed, and it feels hollow explaining it after the fact. There were days when I'd finish and realize I hadn't spoken to anyone all day. Not because I was antisocial, just because the work didn't require conversation. At first that felt like freedom. No meetings, no interruptions, no small talk. Over time it started to feel strange, like my world was shrinking into my own thoughts. You start noticing little things, like how your mood rises and falls based on invisible pressures no one else sees. That can quietly mess with your sense of balance. I watched a friend go through something similar. He made good money, better than most people we knew. On paper he had everything, but he became quieter, more closed off. Conversations stayed shallow. He stopped coming around as much. Later he told me he felt disconnected from normal life, like everyone else lived in a different rhythm. He eventually stepped away, not because he failed, but because he didn't like who he was becoming. That stuck with me. Making money didn't protect him from the mental weight. Crypto amplified that feeling for me in a weird way. The pace, the constant chatter, the emotional swings. It was like pouring gasoline on every impulse. I had to step back more than once and ask myself why I was even there. Not in a dramatic way, just this quiet realization that my brain was getting pulled into something that wasn't healthy for me. Later, I realized it was just my brain doing what brains do under stress and excitement. Still, recognizing it didn't make it disappear instantly. There's also the loneliness of not being understood socially. When someone asks what you do and you say you trade, you can see their mind filling in assumptions. Some think you're gambling. Some think you're rich. Some think you're lazy. Very few understand the emotional labor part of it, the constant self-regulation, the constant decision fatigue, the way your confidence can quietly erode if you're not careful. You learn to keep explanations short because long explanations usually don't land anyway. I used to believe professional freedom meant peace. Everyone around me believed it too. It sounded logical. It still sounds logical. No boss, no schedule, no limits. But over time, what I kept noticing was that freedom also removes structure, feedback, and shared struggle. In a normal job, you complain together, you laugh together, you share stress. In trading, most of the struggle happens silently inside your own head. That can make wins feel strangely empty sometimes, and losses feel heavier than they probably should. There were periods where I lost confidence in quiet ways. Not dramatic blow-ups, just this slow erosion where I hesitated more, doubted more, second-guessed things I used to trust. I didn't understand this part for years. I kept thinking it was just about better discipline or better routines. Eventually, it clicked that isolation itself changes how you experience pressure. When there's no outside perspective, your inner voice gets louder and not always kinder. I had to learn how to build small anchors into my life that had nothing to do with markets. Simple routines. Conversations, physical movement, normal human stuff. Not as some self-improvement project, just as a way to stay grounded. This took me longer than I want to admit. I used to think toughness meant ignoring this stuff. Turns out ignoring it just made the loneliness louder. The strangest part is that from the outside it still looks like freedom. I can structure my day how I want. I can take breaks when I want. I don't answer to anyone. All of that is true. And yet, the responsibility never really leaves your shoulders. You carry it into your evenings, into your sleep, into your moods. You get better at managing it, but it never fully disappears. Sometimes I think about the version of me that started this path, full of hunger and big ideas about independence. I don't regret it, not at all. But I wish I had understood sooner that professional freedom has a quiet cost, not financial, emotional, social, mental. It asks you to be okay spending long stretches alone with your own thoughts, your own doubts, your own discipline. Some people thrive in that. Some slowly shrink inside it without noticing. I still catch myself comparing my day to other traders online sometimes. Even now, it's human. Someone posts a big win, a confident take, a polished lifestyle clip, and a small part of my brain reacts before logic steps in. I've learned to notice it and let it pass. That took time. It still takes attention. The noise isn't going away. The tools will keep getting faster. The pressure will keep finding new shapes. There are also moments of quiet satisfaction that are hard to explain. Not excitement, not adrenaline. Just this calm sense that you handled yourself well under pressure, that you didn't spiral, that you stayed patient when your impulses wanted noise. Those moments matter more to me now than any flashy outcome. They're small, but they feel real. This part is uncomfortable to talk about, but there were times when the loneliness fed into overtrading for me. Not because I wanted money, but because I wanted stimulation, something to break the silence in my head. Once I recognized that pattern, I had to be honest with myself about why I was acting. That honesty isn't always flattering, but it's necessary if you want to stay sane in this line of work. I've met traders who made a lot of money and still felt empty, restless, disconnected. I've met traders who barely scraped by but felt mentally balanced and grounded. The money part doesn't automatically solve the internal part. If anything, it can mask it for a while until it shows up in other ways. The loneliness doesn't mean something is wrong. It just means this path is different than most people imagine. It's quiet, it's personal, it's repetitive in strange ways. You're constantly facing yourself more than the market, your patience, your fear, your ego, your need for control, your need for validation. All of that gets exposed over time. Some days I still feel that gap between my world and everyone else. Not in a sad way, just in a realistic way. I've learned to accept it instead of fighting it. I keep a small circle. I protect my mental space more than I used to. I don't chase every noise anymore. I value calm more than excitement now, which younger me would probably laugh at. If this sounds familiar, you'll probably get what this channel is about. If you've been through something like this, drop it in the comments. I read the comments more than people think. Subscribe if this kind of honest trading talk helps you think a little clearer. At the end of the day, the freedom is real. So is the loneliness. Both exist at the same time. You learn to carry them together. You don't conquer it. You don't eliminate it. You just get better at sitting with it, understanding it, not letting it quietly steer your decisions. That's the part nobody really talks about. And once you notice it, you can't really unsee it.